You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Podcast Network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com. You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast. This is episode number 352 of East Central Indiana's favorite podcast. I am your host tonight, Dakota Davis. I am joined by the executive producer sitting at the table with the purple tablecloth, Mr. Zach Burcham.
Evening.
Tonight we're going to be talking to Jeff Watterson.
Hello.
This is his third episode on the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast. We're going to be talking to Jeff tonight.
Before he was famous.
Yes. That's right. We did. We're going to be talking to Jeff about Race to Survive New Zealand, which is the latest adventure that Jeff has been on. The last two times that he was on was both in January of 2023 and 2022.
Yeah.
They were both post-race for you.
Yep.
One was the Tuscobia Winter Ultra.
Right.
And the other one was the Bandera in Austin, Texas. No, not Austin.
San Antonio area, Bandera, Texas.
Middle of nowhere.
Yeah, middle of nowhere, Texas.
Jeff doesn't run races that are places people go.
Why would you want to go to those places?
And then one other interesting fact that I noticed today is that both of those episodes were exactly 91 minutes long.
Oh, really?
So we'll see how we do tonight.
Challenge accepted.
As I left the house today, I said I've never come to the podcast when the sun was out. So
it's always
January.
Yeah.
So I was like, man,
it's a weird thing. It's been a weird thing the last couple weeks to get out of it. We walk outside, it's still light.
But we'll be talking to Zach. We're going to be talking to Jeff about. We're also going to talk to Zach. We'll be talking to Jeff about the TV show itself, his motivation for signing up, his teammate, the challenges and highlights, his strategy going into it, and then anything that he's got going on in the future at the end of the show. So make sure you stick around until the very end. This show is about our lives in rural Indiana. We're here to push your boundaries and make you think as individuals. Sometimes we will provoke you. Other times we will make you laugh, but hopefully you always learn something new. Zach, you want to help me out here with the Patreon plug?
It's nice and comfortable in here, so we're going to thank the Patreon people who help pay the bills, and because it is 90 degrees outside, and it's not cold in here, but it's comfortable. We're diligent with our use of our dollars, but we could thank Jonathan Phillips of Andy Moore GMC, and who's everybody's favorite car salesman, and then we have Sports Corner and Varsity Outfitters. Hit up Blake for any of your you need any custom embroidery done, shirts, stuff like that. Just hit him up for whatever you think you'll need, and he will do his best to help you. And if you want Boss Hog merch, send an email or a message at bosshogliberty.com, and we will see what we can do for you.
All right, Jeff, let's hop right into it. Why don't you go ahead and reintroduce yourself for any new or first-time listeners? Talk about it. You just had an interesting article that appeared in the Courier Times.
Yeah, so I'm Jeff Watterson, ultra runner, cross country coach, track coach, father, husband. I think that's kind of how the article in the paper stated it was, all those attributes. I've been running for 12 or 13 years now. Been coaching cross country for the last 3 or 4 here at Newcastle, head coach for the first year this last year. So yeah, that's me. I got two daughters, a wife. Yeah, that's me. I run crazy and do stupid stuff sometimes.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'll talk to people about, running or something, and it'll just get brought up naturally in a conversation. I promise I'm not a zealot. And they'll be like, so have you ran this week?
Right.
That's always that question. Like, did you run today? And you're like, yeah, I did. And what did you do? And 6 miles.
Right.
Like, oh gosh, I couldn't do that. And I always tell them, I'm like, actually, I got a friend of mine.
Actually, hold on.
who's an absolute maniac, and did 100K in Texas in January after he trained in Indiana winter.
Yeah. I tell my favorite question is, did you run here? That is my favorite question. I get that more than I get anything. At any event I'm at, somebody will ask, did you run here? Are you running home?
I'm sure.
Yeah, it's pretty comical to get that question a lot.
Yeah, because you have a level of notoriety, and it's because of how much you've ran. But my favorite was always the people who ask if you've ran races.
Yeah,
like that think that a race might be like the size of a NASCAR race,
right?
Where there's 30 people,
right,
and that are all competing for first.
Yeah, Yeah, that's. Did you win? I'm like, no, I didn't. I didn't.
My son still.
I didn't win, but I tried hard.
I'm like, no, man. Like, matter of fact, I watched the winner on the TV.
Right,
from halfway around the track.
Last year, my son immediately told me, because I picked him up on my way to the finish line and ran with him, and he was 3 at the time, and he promptly told me that I lost because he had been seeing people cross the finish line.
Hey, Dad.
That reminds me, there's a kind of a video that's popped up on social media that the algorithms figure out what you do for a hobby, and they show you stuff where a husband was waiting right before the finish line with the kids, and his wife was winning the women's side, and he chucked the kids out to like give her a hug, and she sidestepped him and ran right by him.
Oh, that's so awesome.
She was breaking the tape.
Right. And
it's like, and people are like, that's mean. And there are people like, no, husband should have known better.
Yeah,
husband should have been on the other side of the finish line.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite.
The husband had to be like, ooh, that was a mistake.
That was not a good idea. I was at a race and we were waiting, and I think I got 3rd or 4th in this half marathon, and the person in front of me, we were all kind of waiting, and the guy had got 2nd. And his girlfriend said, you're walking home. And he's like, why? She's like, 2nd place is 1st place loser. You're not riding with me. And I was like, oh, man, he got 2nd.
I don't know if I've ever been. I was 3rd or 4th in a race. That's the highest I've ever been, I think.
Third's the highest I've been. So
yeah. And it was, I got beat by a kid. And it was a 5K in Shirley.
Right.
So,
yeah,
that's like...
My son talking about the lead up, which we will talk about it at the end of the show, the Newcastle Mini Marathon, which TNT Endurance Sports is putting on with in collaboration with the Henry Community Health Hospital, and they are doing a 5K, a half-mile fun run, a 10K, and the mini marathon. And my son desperately at 4 years old wants to run a race,
right?
Because I'm running a race,
right?
And I was like, well, I've seen him run 3 miles before. It would be cool if I could have, maybe my father-in-law, who's a runner, run with him in the 5K.
Right.
But the age limit is 6. So I was like, well, because the problem is like, I think that if I just sign him up for the half mile,
right,
it would be over so quickly.
Right. He's not going to enjoy it.
He'd kind of be like,
this is not enough.
This is what I do. Like, this is what I did earlier this morning.
Right.
Because he's 4 and he's got energy from God above to fuel himself.
I think my oldest was probably, both my kids were probably 4 or 5 when they did their first 5K. And it was a run walk. And
right.
My youngest, I think I put on my shoulders a little bit. But yeah, they were probably that age when they did their first 5K.
So that's what I think I'm going to start doing, is like looking into races and then just being like, I'll sign up for the 5K, right, and then just be like, call a race director or reach out.
They'll be
cool.
Most of the time they're cool as long as you're cool.
Yeah.
What they don't want to see is a parent show up and like be shouting at their kid, like their kid's like,
right,
and like running a kid into the ground.
Right.
So as long as you keep it fun, because in theory you want the kid to like run again.
Yeah, that's the key.
For life.
Yeah,
that's Jeff and I's coaching philosophy, to try and make it fun, because we want them to like run.
We want them to run for life. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we want to scare them off. So I think as long as you're like normal with the kid and they're fine with it.
Yeah,
their kids doing halves now. There were like
Yeah.
8-9-year-olds doing half
I was listening to
marathons.
Cameron Haynes. You guys know who that is?
I do. Yeah.
I was listening to him on a podcast the other day, and he was talking about like how he has some regrets in parenting with how hard he pushes kids. And he was talking about his one son ran his first half marathon at 7.
Oh, wow.
It was like, bro.
Yeah.
And he used his older brother's birth certificate to get his son signed up for this half marathon.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That is insane.
No,
I was like, thank God, like, because I feel bad for the kid. I'm glad that I'm hearing this in the context of like, I pushed my kids too far.
Right.
And not like, I'm
Not like,
super
I wish I
proud
would have
that
done
did
more.
that.
Yeah. He could have done faster.
when you're falsifying documents or like borrowing documents from like you're essentially moving the plates from one car to the next to get your kid
Yeah.
signed up, too far.
And the thing is the half marathon was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, bar none, physically. I worked for, and previously I had worked for like 13 months to build a deadlift. My goal was to lift over 4 plates.
Right.
And I worked for 13 months consistently, and I reached that goal.
Right,
and it
right.
was hard. So it's not like I'm saying that out of a place of nothing.
Right. It's not like you were a couch sitter. Right.
It was insanely difficult to push a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
That is wild.
And they didn't do like the beginner's plan.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
They were
No.
doing like 16 or 18.
But
on
then
the longs.
like
yeah.
that kid is now 21, and he holds the world record for the most amount of chin-ups in a 24-hour period.
Oh, geez.
He has the world record for the fastest marathon ran in a pair of denim jeans.
Oh, jeez.
Like, he is grown up to be an animal.
Right.
You know?
But it could have went the other way.
Right.
You know, I mean, we're all glad it went this way, but it could have went the other way.
It could have been horrific.
Right.
But anyway, speaking of races, let's talk about Race to Survive New Zealand.
Race to Survive New Zealand.
That is why we're all here. That's why you guys are listening right now. So let's talk about, first of all, signing up. How did you hear about it? And what were your thoughts signing up?
So my teammate, Corey Waltering, he was my ultra running coach. We met 6 or 7 years ago through social medias. We met. We became friends. I needed a running coach. I had run my first 50-mile race. It didn't go bad, but didn't go well. You know, I did it on my own. I'd done all my other marathons on my own. So I decided I needed a coach. He was a coach. He was coaching another acquaintance of mine, a friend of mine. And so I contacted him, he became my coach. We immediately, within the first 6 or 8 months, just became really good friends. Not only a coach and a mentor, but just became friends, you know, talk every day. He's just an amazing person. So, you know, we grew this relationship. I grew to where I could kind of coach myself at that point. He stopped being my coach. We stayed friends. So fast forward to last year, it was in May of 2023. I remember I was at Los eating, and he sent me a text. He said, "Hey, give me a call and make sure you're sitting down when you call me." And I was like, "Oh, geez, you never know what you're going to get with Corey when that comes around." So gave him a call back. I said, "What's up, man?" And he said, "I just got a call from one of the casting agents for Race to Survive New Zealand." Let me back that up. Race to Survive. We didn't know where we were going. Another acquaintance friend of ours was in the first season. Hunter Leininger was in the first season. So Hunter had helped Corey with one of his FKTs, and me and Hunter had worked together to help Corey pace and crew in that FKT. Fastest known time. So,
Okay.
So it's not quite a race. It's an individual.
It's not quite like a documented record, but it's like they keep like a tally of this course, like Westwood Trail could have.
Yeah, it could.
So, a lot of times these are like point to point, like trails.
This FKT was on the Pinhoti, which is Alabama to Georgia. It's down south, 355 miles. So Corey, my teammate, holds that FKT 5 days. I can't remember the exact numbers. But so Hunter had helped with that. Hunter was on that first episode. So the casting agent had reached out to Corey and said, "Hey, would you be interested if you could find a teammate to do this Race to Survive?" He immediately called me. And I said, "Yes, let me make sure I can. So, immediately it was like, yes, I do, but let me verify before I can just scream yes. So went to talk to the wife, talked to my employer, kind of got permission to pursue it, because I was going to be gone for possibly, for up to, I think 8 weeks is what they were telling us. So, it's a big gap to be gone from your family and be from work and all that stuff. So that started the ball rolling, getting that from that initial, hey, are you setting down conversation? And then there's, then there's a process. It's not like an automatic just because you got a call from a casting agent that thinks you may be suitable for this. You're not automatically signed up.
Right.
So, we did jumped through those hoops, Zoom interviews, written applications, things like that. So that's what started that. And then that whole time, it's like, you have to train like you're going. You have to prepare like you're going, but you're not set yet.
You're in limbo.
Yeah, you're in limbo. So that process of it was an adventure of itself, just getting to that end goal to even go. So we spent the summer, I spent the summer training, backpack hiking, doing some weighted hikes and stuff like that, doing some, and, Zach will attest, I stay in a base shape running and that. So, it didn't add too much more other than some weighted hikes and then some skills tests. Cause at that point, it's a survival show as well. You gotta be able to make your own fire. You gotta be able to maybe do some fishing and some foraging and things like that. So it's not just the physical aspect of it. Now at this point you have to move, but you also have to be able to survive while you're out there.
So you are, okay. Well, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. Right. So preparing physically, sounds like you're doing some rucks. You're going probably out to local trails,
Westwood, things like that. Yeah,
rucking around for miles on end, right?
Right.
And the skills test, are you like, I need to refresh my memory on how to scale and fillet a fish? Is it what food is going to be edible?
Yeah. So, and without knowing where we're going, because we had no idea where we were going, we were given kind of not even until the very end where we were given even a kind of a basis of what the terrain would be like. But things like navigation, because I knew there was navigation involved, I needed to, I've done several venture races, so I know how to use a map and compass, but I had to make sure I sharpened those skills because I'm using a map and compass on national television. It's one thing when you're at the local Dino race doing an adventure race. It's a different thing when you're on USA Network.
That makes sense.
So we sharpen those skills, and Corey is very strong on his athletic side, but is not as strong on the survival side. It's just not what he does. Gotcha. So that's why he immediately thought of me, because he knew I'd adventure raced. He could do those things, grew up hunting and fishing and things like that. I'm not an avid outdoorsman, but I'm knowledgeable enough that I felt comfortable being able to do it.
We've talked in the past, and I know that you, like, to describe yourself as an avid outdoorsman, I feel like the barrier to entry is pretty low these days.
Yeah.
Sleeping outside once a year probably qualifies.
Yeah.
I'll say this though. Jeff owns a camper. Jeff goes camping without his camper more in a year. He'll send me a picture. I'm like, Jeff, you own a camper.
Yeah.
Why are you on the ground somewhere? And he's like, I don't know, man. It's what I do.
It is what I do. Like most weekends I sleep like at my house. Most weekends my wife will attest, like once it gets springtime, I sleep in the hammock outside Fridays and Saturdays. I mean, that's just what I do.
Hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, like I have a perfectly fine house and I will sleep in the hammock most of the summer. That's what I look forward to on the weekends.
Yeah. Yeah. I grew up doing a lot of backpacking and hiking, especially late high school years and right after high school. There's nothing like it. Mm-hmm. There's definitely there's a sense of primal fulfillment.
Yes,
is the only way I can put it.
Yeah,
it's like, this is what I was made to do.
Right.
As a human being,
we were made to be outside.
As an animal,
yeah,
this is it, and it's really cool. And I just feel like so many people don't get there. They don't
Right.
get the experience. But then also, a lot of people just don't enjoy it because they don't get that experience young enough.
Right.
To where it's like they are conditioned to hate discomfort.
Right. Right.
And not see the joy in small discomforts.
Right.
It sounds like to me, if you're training for something like Race to Survive, your whole life is focused on making yourself uncomfortable, but trying to seek the positive in
Right.
it.
And that's the key, is like, because you're gonna be uncomfortable. Like when you watch the show, I mean, it's uncomfortable, and you have to be able to find those small joys in that uncomfortable. Whether that's, man, I slept like crap on the ground, but as soon as I open up that tent, oh my gosh, the sunrise is coming up and it's beautiful, and it just changes that whole, I forgot that I didn't sleep great last night.
Right.
And and some of that, like Corey, my teammate, like that's why one of the reasons he got me, he's not a tent guy. Like he does not sleep. Like if he's got the option of sleeping in a tent, he's sleeping in a hotel, So, for him to jump out of his comfort zone and do that's
pretty impressive on his part.
Yeah. And like he's even to the, we've talked now, like he's just this year, he's already spent more time in a tent this year than he's ever spent in a tent in his, 33 years of his life, So it was that aspect of it for him, not trying to fast forward too much, but like that was what he took from this whole Race to Survive experience,
Yeah, let's talk about Corey. So Corey Waltering, is that how you pronounce his name?
That's how you pronounce it.
Okay, so he was your teammate from Tennessee.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And so you described a little bit about your relationship as being he was your running coach, but I assume that if you're the first person that pops into his mind about being a teammate for possibly 8 weeks,
right,
then your relationship probably is a little bit more than just coach and athlete.
He's originally from Illinois. Has spent a lot of his time traveling. He's a professional ultra runner. So he gets paid to be an ultra runner. His history is he started out in high school as a baseball player, and then found out he was decent at track, and then moved on after that, and then did triathlons, and then fell in love with trail running, and so now he's a professional ultra runner, and that's what he does.
Well, sidebar here, what does that career look like?
Yeah, so we don't talk about it too much, but it's definitely a different lifestyle,
Just a lot of travel.
A lot of travel. Like he travels a lot, and he moves around a lot. He's spent, originally from Illinois, lived in Chattanooga, lived in Denver, Colorado, lived in Vegas for a while. He's living in Maine currently. So, for him, that's a lot of travel. Like I think he just got back 3 weeks ago from Mongolia. He for his current sponsor did a 2-week shoot in Mongolia. Like they packed them out they just lived out in the middle of nowhere in Mongolia for like a week, like off grid. Like
he's an interesting Instagram follow. There's almost never civilization in the background of his photos.
Yeah. His Instagram, patreon.com/bosstalkallliberty. You get the show notes before the show starts. His Instagram is linked in those show notes. So beyond your teammate, let's talk about the other folks, the other contestants that are on the show. What's it like whenever you get there? You've got to compete against these people.
Yeah, so it's a bit daunting when you because we didn't know who we were competing with. We didn't know we were going to New Zealand till like almost we got on the plane. So there's a lot of the Race to Survive does. They want you to be immersed in this whole experience.
There's Race to Survive Alaska as well.
Yes,
right?
correct.
That was
the first season is first season's Race to Survive Alaska, and this season's Race to Survive New Zealand. So it's it's going to be a series of Race to Survive and then a new location.
Like Alone.
Yeah, like Alone. So we don't know who we're competing against. So you learn who you're competing against while you're out there. So
wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. So you have no idea who your competition is. So that's the difference is you can kind of, in a local 5K, you can kind of know who you're competing against, or even some of the bigger 50Ks and 100Ks that I've ran, you can look at the sign-up sheet and know who you're racing against. We have no idea who any of these people are. So not only are you racing against New Zealand, you're racing against the survival aspect of it. You have no idea who this because it is a competition. So That aspect of it is a lot different because you don't know the skill sets of the other people. You can only you only know your skill sets, so you don't know where you're at, and you don't know exactly what you're going to do. In our first race, we did an alpine pass section where we went from river to snow covered pass to a pack raft section that was class 3 rapids. So wow, just in that first week, it was an epic adventure. In that first race, I should say, we did several different aspects of New Zealand just in that first race.
Did they tell you? How did you find out their backgrounds? Did they tell you, or were you given any kind of heads up at all?
For the other competitors?
Yeah, other competitors.
No, we didn't find out anything until
you found out when they happened to tell you.
Yeah. That's how we, really that first survival camp is where we kind of got to know everybody. Because once you're racing, you're not really with anybody. You're with
everybody
yourself.
kind of tries to space themselves
Yeah,
out. You watch the first episode, everybody tries to and not even that'll even come into your strategy play later. We talk about strategy during the races. Keeping other people away from you is something that you specifically tried to do at one point during the show.
Yeah.
I just wonder because when you're watching the show, they're telling you who these people are, and you're like, one of the team are smoke jumpers.
Yeah,
you're like, what the world?
Yeah,
these guys jump out of aircraft, perfectly good aircraft, into fires.
Yeah, that's what they do. And those two,
that's what David Goggins says.
Yeah.
It's his day job.
Yeah. That's his day job. Those two guys are just amazing individuals themselves because of what they do. You're literally, it's a crazy job.
Yeah, you're just like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a character from Planes.
Yeah.
That's not a real job.
That's not a real job, is it? Is it? You really do that?
People actually do that.
Yeah. And it's that whole, looking at the smoke jumping job is just once they explain some of it's crazy. And then not to get too crazy about their job, but they make minimum wage. That was one of the things that blew me away more than anything.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah.
That's not a big money job.
No, it is not a big money
there's
job.
No hazard.
No,
pay?
That's what they told me. They're like, we basically make minimum wage, and they make their own gear, all of their parachutes, all of their backpacks. They make those. That's part of the training is they teach them to make their own.
So they're
gear.
jumping out of aircraft with homemade parachutes.
Not only, yeah. I'm telling you, it only gets better once you talk to them. It's just these
guys. Do
they
hate their lives?
No, that's the so Ethan's.
That's one of those things you have to do. You're you want to help people and that's like an adrenaline junkie's dream job.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I get paid in sunrises. That's one of their quotes. That's one of Ethan's quotes.
But their job's trying to rob them of the next
right,
one.
Exactly. But
I've seen a lot of good sunrises.
Yeah. Without jumping out of a plane to see it. Yeah.
I bet. The sunrises around a wildfire are probably pretty amazing too. I bet they legit are that's probably a side effect of that.
Yeah, you could go on a whole podcast about those two guys because they're just amazing.
So I've seen also, we're talking about other contestants here. I've seen on your Instagram and stuff, you tagging people who competed on the show as well.
Right.
So what's it like to eventually build a relationship with these people?
Yeah, so that aspect of it is one of the cooler aspects of the show because now you're with 18 like-minded people. You know what I mean? It takes a special kind of person to even sign up for this show.
One of the questions I have was that part of the show, if you haven't watched it, watch it. I know if you have it on YouTube TV, if you add it, it's on demand and it's on Peacock too. Is so they give you guys a race. The races are usually, depending on how fast you're doing it, 2 to 3, 4 days, 12 hours per day, because there's a certain point in the day that they shut you guys down, and wherever you are, stop, and you have to set up camp within 50 feet or so many distance of where you're at.
Right.
But then when you get done with each race, you end up in what's called survival camp, and they don't really go into a lot of detail about what goes on at survival camp, but everybody's there as they finish. They all kind of in. So you're in this area, and so in one regard, you're competing against these people for $500,000, and so you want to beat them. In the same regard, you guys are all going through the same, functionally, a trauma.
Right.
at the same time, this crazy experience at the same time. So there's got to be like a bonding aspect, but at the same time, so a competitive aspect where it's like a little bit of like a poker game. And I want to be friends with you, but you're probably trying to kind of figure out weaknesses and stuff with them. But you're also just like, how insane is this that we're camped out in the middle of New Zealand?
Yeah. So that's like, that was one of the things. So like, when you're racing against these individuals, you're racing against these individuals. In survival camp, it's a bit like that, and then we kind of, trauma bond is the term, you're bonding over what you just went through. So you do learn about these other people. And then you realize that, okay, we're all wired the same. It's you meet these people that just get it. And you're like, okay, I'm in New Zealand with a group of people that get it, that they get paid in sunrises, or they go out and the two moms are 100-mile racing moms, so they go out and they do this, and everybody understands what you spend your life thinking about. They know that, okay, you love to sleep outside because, they love to sleep outside. They love to do this, they're not a 3-shower-a-day person.
You're all the crazy people in your group at home.
Yeah.
Everybody at home is like, that guy's crazy. And all of a sudden, all the crazy
is together
in one place.
In one place around a campfire drying our socks. So it's like...
It is. It's like different kinds of crazy, because there's the smoke jumpers. There's some... like climbing guides.
Yeah, there's 2 climbers.
There's some hunters that are dad and his son-in-law.
Yep.
Man, that's a dynamic.
Yeah.
And then there's some endurance athletes. I don't know what Canadian roughnecks are, but there's some Canadian
they're oil people.
Okay.
Yeah, so they work oil rigs.
That's a rough job.
And there were some climbers from Brooklyn.
Yep.
And I'm trying to catch all of them. I can't remember all of them now.
There's Heather is
the endurance athletes.
Yeah, Heather owns a gym in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Heather and Emilio from the East Coast, and then Stephen McKellar climbers from the East Coast. So they have their own set of
they're all different backgrounds. Like it's all over the place.
It really is. It was very diverse in what they did. 2 river guides. So they are, whitewater rafting guides is what they do for a living. We got Creighton and Paulina, who they've, the recently divorced couple, but there's so much more than that. They're both adventurers, climbers, pack rafters. They do a little bit of everything. So I think that covered everybody. But yeah, you get to know these people in survival camp, but then when race clock starts, their competition
turns it back.
And and it's like, it's been fun now after the experience to talk to these people, to get to know them then on a personal level outside of this race. So we stay in contact, with everybody. We have a somewhat big group chat that we involve ourselves in.
So we're talking about the survival camp and stuff. Was there any particular moment in your experience that was the most challenging that you had to endure?
All this is our, can't really talk about anything in the future, but what's been aired, race 2 was a really strenuous race. Race 1 was hard. It had its aspects of being hard. Race 2 was just a pounding hard race. The terrain, I've said multiple times, there's nothing in New Zealand like mammal or insect wise, reptile that'll kill you. New Zealand itself, the landscape is out to get you.
The first episode, first race, 20 feet into it, people are falling.
Yeah.
Because it's like in some bog or something.
It's in a marsh that you're just like, you can't.
It's in Middle Earth. They're in Middle Earth.
Yeah, basically, we're in Middle Earth.
Understand why hobbits have big feet.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're like literally they all get their chest and they start, they get their directions and they run, and like people get like 15 feet and are just gone. They're just face down in the grass.
It looked like a scene from a World War II movie. I mean, just bodies going everywhere.
I'm like, how frustrating must it be though? I'm an adventurer, so I'm going to win this, and you can't stay on your feet for 20 feet just because the terrain is like so foreign and so bizarre.
Wow. And that's how you start.
That's how you start. That's literally the first clearing that this thing is in. it's just taking people out.
Right. And so then that, the first race was hard in its own aspects. So that second race was just grueling in the terrain because it was rocky climbing. You were up or you were climbing up or you were climbing down on rocks, big rocks, little rocks, moving rocks. It's just like you didn't know the next step, what was going to happen, if you were going to lose your footing or whatever. So like mentally, now you've done one race, you've done survival camp, you've started the second race. So mentally that second race just kind of wears on you. So that was, for me, coming into that second survival camp was probably the most exhaustion that I'd felt in really probably my whole life. Just that we had pushed all day long to get there. So that was it.
Overcoming something like that. What's going through your mind?
Yeah. So like, that's the thing is you have to regroup then, you've just come into the hardest thing that you've probably ever experienced, one of the harder things you've ever experienced. And now you have to prepare yourself for race 3. So you start to evaluate like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to quit. So what do I need to do now to make sure that I can continue on to race 3? So you start processing, making sure you're getting the rest. You're making sure that your gear is in good shape. You're making sure that everything is there. You talk about the survival aspect of this whole show. The premise is you're not given any food. That season 2 is a bit different from season 1, to where season 1, they were given some rations in the beginning of each race, and then they would forage and hunt for everything remainder. For us, we had to work for our race. They changed the premise there a little bit, that we had to earn our food. So you go from point A to point B in the race, but there would be a food cache off the beaten path. So out of the way, you could go get a food cache, and those food cache had enough calories to sustain you. I think I say in one of the episodes that, it's enough to survive, but it's not an overabundance at all when you get that food cache. So now you've went out of your way, you risk your placing to go out of your way to get this food to make sure. And there was strategy involved with that, with people like some people wouldn't get the caches. Me and Corey's strategy was to get the cache, get as much food as we could, but you're not talking about mass amounts of food. So now when you're in survival camp and you're thinking, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that I can get to race 3, or, even the first survival camp, what do I need to do to make sure I'm in race 2? So you're conserving your calories. You're trying to make sure you're doing the right things to get to race 3. So mentally, you're just trying to check off boxes. Am I getting enough sleep? Am I getting enough food? Mentally, am I prepared to go to that next race?
Yeah. So I'm sure you're also watching your partner, right? Because that's an equal part of it,
right?
I've always wondered that with the paired shows, where the anxiety you must feel of like, I'm good to go, but he's got bags under his eyes.
Yeah. And that's in a teamed event. And, I learned from adventure racing, locally adventure racing, that it's an up and down. Like you're, just speaking at local adventure races, not just on the show, but like you're not always both at a high at the same time.
I would assume never.
Yeah, it's so hard for everybody to be in that high spot at the same time.
I have one coworker that I work with,
right,
and it's the same way. It's my daily life.
Yeah,
neither one of us it's very rare that we both come to work feeling great,
right? And you guys don't sleep under the same tarp, So that was
I could only barely imagine what that is like.
And mine and Corey's dynamic is really good in that we read each other really well. For as little time as we've spent actually adventuring together, we read each other really well. He spent a lot of time knowing my cues while he was my coach. I remember one time it was coming up, I'd get my weekly schedule on Sunday from him. I had ran earlier in the day Sunday, just rough. I mean, we were leading up with big week. I remember it's vivid, the memory of this. I come home from that run. I'd ran around Baker. I come home from that run. I'd got in the shower, and as I was showering, it was constant thought: how am I going to tell Corey that I'm tired? I don't know what next week looks like, but how do I tell Corey that I'm tired? When I got out of the shower, I had a text from Corey that said, "Hey, buddy, how you feeling?" And it's that intuition, the coach's intuition of, okay, he could tell that something I was tiring. And I said, man, honestly, I've been fretting this for a while, this afternoon to tell you that I'm tired. And he said, okay, I kind of thought so. Let's back down next week. So he's good at reading me. And in the flip side, I'm good at reading people. So I could tell, when he was in a bad spot during the race. So we really did well together as teammates, pushing each other.
I didn't think about that before, but that's definitely an interesting dynamic that you guys brought to it as coach and athlete.
Yeah.
Having worked together in that capacity in the past, you can read each other a lot better.
Right. And he could really read me. And then it was fun because that coach athlete dynamic worked great on the physical aspect of it, but he's not a survivalist. So there again, I was kind of in control of that aspect of it. So we both had our things that we were, he's going to make sure that I'm pushing where I need to push. And he did that, but I'm going to make sure that we get camp set every night. I'm going to make sure that we get the fire built every night. I'm going to make sure that we get, in my duties on Race to Survive and he could cook. I'm not saying he couldn't, but my duties were a lot of that, making sure that we had a fire so we could cook and do things like that.
Sounds like the producers on this show knew what they were doing.
Yeah, it's almost like they did their research all summer long.
So let's talk a little bit about that strategy now. Moving forward, you guys, you're going, you're starting.
Right.
So how much have you guys talked about your strategy? What are your thoughts of it going in? And what educated you on how to pick that strategy?
Yeah, so both of us being distance athletes, him a lot more than me. We're both ultra runners, but him doing multi-day events, he has that background of what to do on multi-day events. Like I paced and crewed him on that Pinhoti FKT, so I had some experience with him, what to do when he's in situations like that. But our strategy going in was, we're going for all the food, because we need that. We can hike fast. We can run fast. But there's no need to blow ourselves out in the beginning. So that was kind of our strategy, was to...
It sounds like a distance runner strategy.
Yeah,
if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and that's what that was our strategy going in it. And, it's hard, you got to be able to punt. That strategy is not working. If you're in dead last, that strategy is not working. You got to be able to figure something out. But it worked well for us throughout the whole thing. We, obviously wanted to be as far up in placing as we could. But we really felt like, hey, we need food and we need to be steady. And that was our whole mantra, was we're just going to keep moving at a good pace, make sure we're getting our food, make sure that we're eating, make sure we're doing what we need to do. So that was our whole strategy. And we talked about it in the beginning, that was how we went into it. And it's hard because you don't know the competition, but we're like, okay, we're going to do this and then we'll move on.
So let's talk about the last time you were on. We already talked about this a little bit with the terrain in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
What was the overall climate like? I'm so uneducated on New Zealand. I just want to know how, like, the humidity, how different is it? The heat, what was it all like?
So it was, we didn't get a lot of time to research anything about New Zealand. So I was very uneducated. I found out within a week of before I went that New Zealand's actually 2 islands. I didn't, I don't zoom in on New Zealand. It's 2 islands. I thought it was one big island. I got a sticker here, but you can see it's like it's 2 islands. Yeah. I didn't realize that till I got there. I'm like, oh hey. So the climate is so it was spring there. When we were there, it was spring, so it very similar to our spring, to where the overnight was a little chilly and then it could warm up. We went from one morning we woke up with frost everywhere and it was like 28 degrees, I believe. We spent several days in the rain in the like mid 30, low 40, so not
The worst
rain possible.
existent.
Yeah, it could be
Cold
snow.
and wet.
Yeah, cold.
Gross.
We talked
Yeah.
about 35 and raining is just like the worst.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's what, we did that. So then, but then like 4 days later, it was like 75 degrees and it's not humid, but it's just the sun's beating down on you and you're in these red rocks that are just not helping with the sun. One fun fact about New Zealand, the ozone layer apparently above New Zealand is non-existent. And
Is that where the hole is?
yeah, I guess it's over New Zealand because they're not proud of it, but it's one of the first things they tell you when you get off the plane. I learned really quick about 100 times that there's no ozone layer over New Zealand.
Welcome to the sunburn capital.
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
world.
Yeah, and I am, I don't consider myself a ginger, but I do have a red beard, and I burn really.
It was hard to like figure out from watching the show what the climate was, because you saw people in like light jackets, but then you also noticed that people like just never exposed any more skin than absolutely necessary, because like all the time they'd have their hoods pulled up and the drawstrings pulled, so like just their face was sticking out, and you're like, this is probably as much an exposure thing, like they're just trying to keep as much of their bodies covered up at all times as possible, probably as much for bugs, or I don't know how much bugs. New Zealand's one of those crazy places that is limited in what gets in and out, but yeah, it did look like it was
when you saw me, most of the time when you saw me with my hood on was for exposure. I had a sun shirt that had that was long sleeved, and it was just sun exposure, just trying to keep it off them, because I'm going to be out there a long time. I don't want to be sunburned on day two. When you go on vacation, you don't want to be sunburned on day two.
Do you feel like you had any time to just kind of take it in?
No. And that was
So you want to go back?
Oh yeah, I want to go back so bad because you're racing. You're moving with purpose through this landscape that's just absolutely beautiful, but you don't have the time to absorb it, So it was majestic. I mean, New Zealand is just an absolute beautiful place, but it was hard not to be able to just stop. And I think in one episode you see me pop around a corner and you can see the mountains through the valley, and I pause and I'm like, this is why I'm here. And it's like, it is, because it's just absolutely beautiful.
I feel like that on hikes here.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm not racing anymore. I'm out for a walk.
Right.
And then at the end, I'm like, I should have slowed down. Yeah.
And the water is just so clear and blue there. It's really an amazing place. Like, I think I could be on the tourism board for New Zealand and just tell people, hey, this is just go. I mean, it's just an amazing place.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah. And it was hard not to be able to take in that landscape when we wanted to,
So speaking more about the last time that you were on here, it seems like the last couple of times you've come on, you've explained lessons learned.
Yeah.
You've had like a post-op brief
right
on this podcast from your races.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know what you've taken away from this.
Ooh, so this, obviously a lot bigger than the last two times I was on here. The takeaway from this is it's being outside in nature and harnessing all that is really an amazing experience. And there is other people out there who are like, not that I'm anything special, but my way of thinking, and I sleep outside on the weekends but there's other people like that. So my takeaway from that is like just that human experience of meeting other like-minded people that you're not really alone in the way you think. I think that's what I took out from this whole experience more than anything, was that there is a group of other people that want to just adventure all the time. And it's not for everybody. And it's like, I wanted this experience for me, to when people watch it, I want people to not that I want to be an inspiration, but I want people to say, okay, this middle-aged guy from Newcastle, Indiana can do this. I can go do that thing that I want to do, whatever that thing is, So I think that's what I took from this whole is the human connection part of it. I know that's kind of sappy in a way, but that's what I took from this whole experience.
No, I think that's great. I think that's really great. Because it definitely rings true. I think people are a lot more capable than what they give themselves credit for, generally speaking. It's like, that life can get crazy busy at times, but I always try to tell people, like, you have the option to make time for yourself. It's people that I work with or people that are acquaintances are like, oh, I don't have time to go running. And I'm like, what are you doing after 9 p.m. on a weekday?
Jeff does a lot of that.
I do a lot of that.
A lot of 9:30 run around Baker Park.
Yeah. What are you doing before you go to work?
Right.
Oh, well, I can't sacrifice that time with my family. Is your family up at 9:30 p.m.?
That's also, like, it sets a good example for your family to, like, take time for yourself, to do something for yourself. Like, my kids know I run when my kids are out, because I can't do what Jeff does. I cannot wait till 9:30 at night and run. I want to eat dinner and I have to take a little time after dinner to, like, let food settle. But, like, my kids, I'm going to go for a run, or I'm running in the morning. I get from the morning run. But, like, they see you go do that, and it's hard. You come back and it hurts and you're sweaty, and that's good to see that, you can make yourself uncomfortable by your own choice, and it's not bad, and it's probably good for you in more ways than one.
And not taking care of yourself doesn't only hurt you, but it will eventually hurt them too.
Right. Yeah.
And in the mornings, for the past few years, there's a book called The Daily Stoic. It's by a guy named Ryan Holiday, and it's a 365-day book.
Right.
So you go through it, and there's always a passage by Marcus Aurelius or Seneca or whoever, and he writes a little like meditation on Stoicism. He also wrote a book called The Daily Dad.
Okay.
And it is similar in that it's 365 days, but it's a little meditation passage on parenting. And it's just reminders. It's not stuff like he's trying to teach you. Right. It's just like, everybody knows these things. You're a parent.
Right.
You stress out about it hardcore before they're born.
Right.
And when they're little tiny babies. But then once they get to be 2, it's like, you know what you should be doing.
Right. And it's different stressors at that point,
Right. I always tell that to people. It's something I tell my son every day. Right. I tell him every day, do what you're supposed to do and your life will be better.
It's just that simple.
That's all it is.
Yep.
But recently, what I've been going through in The Daily Dad is talking about make time for yourself.
Right.
You've got to take time for yourself. Otherwise, you're not going to be a good parent.
Right. You're not regenerated for your kids at that point. You know what I mean? If you're just constantly beat down, then you can't be there for them,
Right. And it's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds to me like what you're saying is that this kind of reaffirmed that for you.
Yeah.
It reaffirmed that passion that you have inside of yourself.
Right.
And made you feel okay with, I'm not a freak.
Right. Honestly, it does, because you get, honestly, when you're sleeping outside in a hammock, outside of your perfectly good house on a Saturday night because you want to be outside, you kind of feel a little weird about it, but it's like you meet other people and you're like, okay, okay, there's other people out there, and I wasn't the only parent on the show, and that was good to see other parents out there, it wasn't just young kids out there.
We opened the show talking about Cameron Haynes signing his 7-year-old up for a half marathon.
Right.
It can go the other way.
It can.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I I completely overwhelmed myself this soccer season personally.
Right.
I was coaching my son's soccer team. I was doing the podcast weekly. I was going back to school and taking 2 classes. I was doing my job that requires more than 40 hours a week.
Right.
I was raising chickens, having dogs, and having a large garden. And I felt like I was going to stroke out.
Right.
So it's like you can completely overdo it.
You can.
But you don't have to do all of those things.
Right.
And you can still, like, you can do a lot.
You can
do so much more than what people think they can do.
Yep.
You meet guys all the time. I know that you see it, that they might be good dads.
Right.
But they go to work, they come home.
Right.
They sit on the couch, they eat dinner, and they go to bed.
Right.
And say, what are you doing?
Right. And they maybe and they
but I don't think that you feel like you're living a fulfilling life that way, because I think that people who do live their life that way, they just feel stuck.
Right.
And it might not necessarily be their fault.
Right.
They might just not know.
That's the key, and I think that's kind of the takeaway I wanted to take is like, I'm 46 years old. I'm a father of 2. You can go and still do these things, and not necessarily just go jump on TV, but go do something. Be passionate. Be passionate about something. And I think that's the key is kind of what you're saying is like there's no real passion in people's lives, and they're just afraid to go do things. And it's like you just have to take those small steps to do those big things, so that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to take away for other people, for me to be like, okay, he's just a normal guy,
Right. But yeah. And you're not just an average guy that signed up to do a crazy TV show.
Right.
It's been baby steps.
Baby steps to get there. I mean, I started running 13 years ago. So it's not like I started running last year and then next thing I'm on TV, So I've worked up to this. I've built relationships and built up to this. I couldn't have done this 13 years ago. And I felt like I can now,
That's such a big thing that people need to be reminded of in today's society, because I think that's why people get stuck in those ruts.
Right.
Is that's all we're bombarded with on social media, is just people who all of a sudden they've got everything in the world, and they're doing everything in the world, and it's like, I can't even get close to that. I'm not even going to try.
Right. And then people shut down. It's like, I can't get there. I'm not going to be Insta famous. So I'm just going to shut down and not do anything. And I think that's the key, is being able to take those small steps and do the little things, and then to get to that big thing.
And a lot of it, dude, with like the social media stuff, is that it's not even real.
Yeah.
Those people aren't even doing half the things
what
that they're telling you they're doing. Or in the athlete fitness community, they're on drugs.
Yeah.
That's 90% of them are on drugs.
Right.
Illegal drugs that are enhancing their performance. You can't do it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get back to the show real quick though, because I'm caught up. As well, 2 things. You're talking about taking care of yourself, taking care of others. Jeff, and the show so far is down 3 teams, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Only one of them has been eliminated.
Correct.
Through the race. Right. The other 2 have tapped out.
Right.
The first team that tapped out were the Burcham climbers, and they tapped out because they chose not to get the cash.
Right.
And went 9 days.
9 days
without food.
Right.
Holy cow.
9 days without food. And then brutally back to survival camp. They're in survival camp with no food. And everybody else has got something.
Right.
And maybe not. Look like a lot was like, you guys are basically getting like squirrel food kind of.
We were getting.
It was like nuts and oatmeal kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because it was stuff that it wasn't there for long. But they threw it on a chest on the top of the hill.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not,
it wasn't like
not refrigerated.
I mean,
no, it's definitely not.
In Monday's episode, there's one of the teams that's got they went and got the cash. They're like counting the nuts out.
Yeah,
like they're foraging. So they went 9 days. They tap out. when you tap out, a helicopter comes and gets you right then and there, which is kind of the coolest thing ever. Like, at least you're going to leave VIP.
Leave on helicopter.
Yeah, leave in a helicopter. And then I think, if I recall correctly, that Corey fell in the first episode or two once and hit his head.
Yeah, early in like race 2, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then it's kind of interesting to kind of explain a little bit of the format that you get from watching on TV. Is there's not really a super incentive through the early races to, like, in terms of the race overall, to be first, second, or third. The advantage is that you're always racing to a chest. You get to the chest, there's stuff in the chest,
right?
And then, but there's not stuff for everybody in the chest,
right? Only the first 3 or 4 teams. Yeah.
The end of the second race, there's like steak,
right?
So those guys that win get steak, or they can pick. You get to pick whatever one out of there. There was an eel catching kit, which they catch 2 flipping eels.
Eels are
on the show, and one of them is just swimming up this creek, and they're like, "Let's try it," and just throw it in there and catch this eel.
Yeah,
frightening. I don't want to be anywhere where there's eels living in a creek. Yeah. It's like the Blue River.
Yeah, it's
but like not even as big as the Blue River.
Yeah.
But it's dead clear. Not the Blue River.
Not the Blue River.
Because they see the eel from like 30 feet away and like, let's just try and catch the eel. And then the first eel they catch is like, was it 20 pounds or something?
It was massive. Like I did not expect them to be that big when we
and then very interestingly, the narrator, who's great.
Yes.
Like tells you the protein content, because they're all like, we need protein so bad. Right. And he's like 600 grams of protein or whatever in this eel. But everybody starts out, when you start the next race, everybody starts out together. So like, it's not like if you win by 2 days, and some of the guys would win by like a day and a half over the last place team, you'll start together. So everybody kind of restarts. You're just advantaged by whatever you got to pick up. Like one of them, it was chairs. They got chairs. But the last race that is still in progress, as of the current episode.
Yep.
You guys were second going to the cache, which was hidden. Like people had a hard time finding it, and one team, Daniel, lost himself the race, getting lost going after the cache, and Corey falls, hits his head on a log. It looks like, doesn't look like a horrible fall, except you guys are wearing like these enormous backpacks with everything you need to live.
Yeah, 35 pounds is
roughly. And it looks like the backpack essentially took Corey when he was a little off balance and like slams him into this log. Yeah. And he takes him in. You remember, he doesn't really get up. You get him up.
Yeah, I help him up.
He's just kind of down like a turtle. Like he is kind of down. And he's he's trying to fight it and noting, and he's been through some stuff in his life. Like he is had like pain.
Yes.
And he's trying to fight it, and you're checking in with him. But like, at what point are you thinking, because I know at one point during the episode he says, today might be my last day.
Yeah.
And like, so what's going through your brain?
So that was, how we talked earlier, you're checking on your teammate, and it was hard because I saw, the falls earlier. And, he had been struggling with a headache. And then to hit that fall on the cache, that just compounded everything. So, you try to put that, we're going to tap out in the way back of your head, but you also have to, you have to face it, that's a possibility with, with him hurting the way he is. So we had, we had said from the beginning, whatever happens, I got your back, whatever decision, I'm not going to stomp my feet and throw a fit. We're a team, so that was the going into it was the strategy of, we're coming home to our families safely. We're not going to push ourselves to where we come home broken. We can come home bent, but let's not come home broken. So
you've done that from training runs.
Yeah, I've done that from training runs. So that was it was a rough decision. It was rough leading up to that. Like you said in the episode, he says, I think this may be the day we're going home. And then that day was a rough day anyway. It was rainy and there was just a lot going on, windy, and that kind of took him, and I can say he ended up with a concussion. So it was a good decision on our part to do that, because as a high school coach, in the back of my head, I'm racing with a guy that could possibly have a concussion, and as a high school coach, I want to teach my kids that racing through concussions. So
Yeah.
so that was a thought as well. And we ultimately made the decision as a team. He decided it was time to go home.
It was a race that if you guys kept going,
Mhm.
that particular race, you're about to rappel into a cave
Yes.
that was 1.5 miles long.
Yep.
And at one point, it looked like you did the Ace Ventura. They were like doing the Ace Ventura birthing themselves through a hole. Like these guys are going into they cannot go through it. I mean, like the first guys, and some of these guys are big.
Yeah.
Like the Hunter guys are
the Hunter
big.
guy, Ryan.
and
Yeah. No, honestly, man, that's how it is.
They had to go hands first.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they could go like shoulders full width. They had to like.
You
And
had to.
they were doing that through this hole.
Yeah. So
And
that was.
And like, you imagine if he like one, he hits his head again.
Yeah.
Which could happen because one person figured out, and it was probably actually the best way to go down, was just like they slid down these rocks into this hole.
Right.
Like there was but I feel like he hits his head again. You can't helo out of a hole.
Right.
Like it was literally this enormous Middle Earth Eye of Sauron hole in the ground that then they just keep crawling back and then they pop out 1.5 miles later underground. So like,
and we were in that. I mean, that we did the cave. We went in the cave. We finished after the cave.
Oh, okay.
So we did go through the cave, and that was kind of the
sketchy.
Yeah, and it's a cave. I mean, it's a 600-foot rappel. So a 600-foot rappel is no joke. They don't sell 600 feet of rope at REI. I don't think. So it's a 600-foot rappel is the biggest. Prior to that, the biggest rappel I'd done was 60 feet. So there was a bit of a curve there on that. So
yeah, that's crazy.
And we did do the cave. So
I don't think the episode really described that well how far into the stage you guys were when you guys tapped out.
Yeah, so it was after the cave. Watching it, I'm not for sure the timeline, but it was after the cave. So he had fallen. We'd gotten the cash. We had to go into the cave. Gotten out of the cave. And then we're trekking in the what they call the green maze at that point. So
is 600 feet of rappelling, because I've rappelled.
Yeah.
Is it long enough to get bored?
So honestly, yes, it is.
So just thinking how long that would take.
It is, and it was fairly slow going. It wasn't it wasn't just a zip down.
Yeah.
So that
You're
was
not zipping down 60.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it would almost. I wouldn't say boring because
you're on fire,
right? Because you are in this big massive hole. Yeah, like can we get to the bottom? We're racing here. So it was the cave was an experience in and of itself because it was. I am personally a bit claustrophobic, so the squeeze is what they called it.
Yeah.
That was a bit daunting to go through that squeeze, but we made it out on the other side and got out and was fine. But and that's one of those things that like there was so much else going on in the cave. The squeeze was just like, okay, whatever. It's just one more thing. It was hard, but the claustrophobia didn't set in.
At least at that point, like somebody else has gone through this.
Well, that
and there's something on the other side that's a livable environment.
Right.
At that point, though, being in a race is a bit of a blessing.
Yeah,
because you're just focused on
on the race. Yeah, that was kind of like you don't have time to focus on that claustrophobia. Like, okay, I got to go. I know that there's people ahead of me, and Ryan's not stuck in this hole right now, so I know somebody else made it through that's bigger than me.
I mean, and there's a lot of moments because I would think the hardest thing for most of the team were probably like the rock climbing, rappelling stuff, because there's some of that stuff where it's like single track, and they put like a safety rope, safety line up for you guys, but there's one where like one of the contestants is like, seriously, like I don't want to do this, and like partner's like, You got to. Just got to do it.
Yeah.
And they're like trying to step on rocks and the rocks are moving and people are, and it's just like, I mean, because that's something like you can't train for that here.
Not here.
In most parts of the United States, you can't train for that. There's a lot of parts of the United States. And you can tell a lot of those people, like, even like the Burcham climbers, like they're probably like, that's probably not the kind of thing they're running into. Like, it seemed like New Zealand was a very interesting place to go. And I bet Alaska is very similar too. And it's got topography in combinations that you can't probably reproduce almost anywhere else on Earth.
Yes.
Because you guys were doing like part like look like rainforest jungle, then you'd be in a mountain and it'd be cold, and you'd be like, and a lot of times you guys just like start in like one river and then end up on top of a mountain. They love to make you guys go up to the top.
They like to make them go to
and
the
then
top.
make you figure out where you're going to drop back down in there.
Yeah.
And so it was like different. You guys would be, every challenge was then like a different ecosystem.
Yeah, it was.
Like three
It
or
was,
four of them. It was like it wasn't like today we're going to do a mountain. It was like, no, there's going to be a mountain, a little bit of river, a cave that you've never seen the likes of in your entire life. And
right.
So what's next, Jeff?
So right now, right now I don't have anything on the horizon. Right now I've focused a lot
I don't believe
on
that. There's something ticking around.
Well, there's always something ticking around, but that maybe not publicly. Right now I'm focused on the cross country team. Like I'm ready for that next season of cross country. This will be my second full year as cross country coach. So right now I'm focused on that. I really, and I can admit this publicly. I don't have that 100-mile race under my belt. 80 is the farthest I've went in an actual race. So I've been looking at ticking off that 100-mile belt buckle. But I want, and like Zach mentioned this earlier, I'm not just a go out and do that cookie cutter 100-mile race. I want to find the one that kind of speaks to me. So I haven't found that one yet, but I'm looking towards that 100-mile race.
Where was that? There's one that just recently finished up. Oh no, I'm thinking of Cocodona.
Yeah, Cocodona 250. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, Cocodona 250. And I mean, I'm not opposed to.
What about the just? Why don't you just knock out the Barkley?
Well,
you gotta find out how to get to.
Gotta find out how to get
Barkley. You don't go to the Barkley.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I've done.
Got to build a resume.
I've done.
Those are
the smaller one.
Wild.
Yeah. I've done the smaller one. But the bigger one's a bit.
Look up, and for anybody that's not familiar with the Barkley, there's a documentary about it. Look it up. Worth the watch. Craziest race director on earth.
Yes, Laz.
And then look up the women's finish for this year, because a woman finished the Barkley for the first time ever.
Yeah.
By like seconds.
Yeah.
And a couple years ago, a guy missed the finish by like seconds.
Yeah.
And if you want to see what absolute and complete sacrificing of yourself for an event while not dying,
Barkley marathons,
and watch that woman finish, because she is like, there's not a lot, the skin color of her skin is not great.
Yeah.
Nothing looks great. And she basically, I think, wanted to pass out over the gate. And if you know about the Barkley, you know about the gate. But look it up, because that was a big deal in the running world.
I love what she
first
said.
female finisher.
She said that she just kept telling herself, if you don't finish this year, you got to come back next year. And I'm not doing this
I don't want to come back again. Yeah. It was just incredible for a female to finish.
We were in the Great Smoky Mountains on spring break when they finished up.
Right.
So I was educating my entire family.
It was such a big. It's like my kids are 17 and 15, and they know about the Barkley. They've known about the Barkley. They can quote stats that maybe normal kids shouldn't be quoting about the Barkley. So it was a big deal as a father of two girls for a girl to finish that race.
It's like the closest real thing to like Squid Games or Hunger Games that they actually have, like in the United States. Like you're wondering, like that's still. Yeah. Okay.
It needs to be televised. It really talk to your people at USA. Let's set some trail cams up.
Yeah.
Race to survive the Barkley.
Yeah, race to survive the Barkley. I don't know, but that kind of kills the spirit of the Barkley. It's like
part of it is like you find out on social media.
Yeah, Twitter is
and like all of a sudden like you were like, oh, because I'm not as plugged in as Jeff is, and that was the interesting thing about like. I remember before Jeff had an iPhone, and Jeff got an iPhone and like puts 13-year-old girls to shame with the iPhone. And he's met all these people, and he even said some of them were trying to figure out like where people were at and stuff, because like they were trying to figure out like, okay, these people dropped off and then they popped back up and trying to figure out what's going on. So they're figuring out while he was gone doing the race, because like people are trying to figure stuff out, because they're like, wait a minute, Jeff's quiet.
Yeah, why is Jeff quiet?
Jeff's never quiet.
I was doing that too, because
just locations turned off.
We'll send reels and stuff back and forth on Instagram, and then all of a sudden there was just nothing.
It was dark.
No reactions, nothing.
Well, and I had to keep it quiet, and you couldn't tell people.
Could you talk to your family?
Yeah, I could talk to them. Obviously they knew I was going to be gone, but it was like we still had to keep things fairly quiet to keep the mystique of of the show.
I knew kind of where Jeff was. I knew what I was. That's how I got to be an assistant cross country coach. Was somebody had to cover things while Jeff was in New Zealand, and so I kind of knew a little bit of what was going on, but I didn't hear much. Just like when he's like, "Okay, I'm gone," and I was in communication with him. It was the most bizarre thing. I still tell people stories about it, but Jeff disappeared, because then I would text message back and forth with him, and he was so far off that I would be talking to him like in the evening, like late at night, and it would be like a day and a half later. Where the time zone difference.
Yeah, it's
and
odd.
then I talk about when Jeff left for New Zealand, he took off on a Thursday and landed on a Saturday and never set foot on land on a Friday.
Yeah.
Entire day of Jeff's life disappeared into an airplane.
Well, so I left on my birthday. Another fun fact about the show, there was 3 of us that had the same birthday on the show. So out of 18 of us, of 18 of us, 3 of us had the same birthday. But I left on my birthday. And I was afraid. I thought I was going to leave the day before my birthday. So,
your birthday wouldn't have existed.
It wouldn't have existed. I wouldn't have had a birthday, because if I'd have left on Wednesday, I would have landed on Friday. Thursday would not have existed. So I wouldn't have had a birthday.
Whole day of Jeff's life disappeared.
Yeah, I was like Groundhog Day or something. So,
yeah.
All right, I think we've got to the point of final thoughts on the show. This is a really good episode, Jeff.
Thank you.
Zach, you got anything else?
Speaking of running, the return of the Moreland Free Fair 5K is back. So for locals, a new course. If you haven't been out to Moreland and you're local and you like to run or walk, bike, whatever, they've got a new stretch of trail out there, and it is gorgeous. I bet it's pretty dang nice this time of year, because it is canopied heavily. And I've been up there once, and to me, it's like a cathedral in terms of the height of the trees and stuff. So it might be worth going out there and check it out, because it's 9 degrees outside, and the way the trees are, there might be a breeze and shade. So look that up, Moreland Free Fair 5K, or morelandfreefair.com, I believe, is the website, and I bet they got links to it. If not, poke around on Facebook or message me, and I can send you a link. Those will be on my side for that. And other than that, stay cool, everybody, because the weather is horrible. And although Jeff is gone, we are going to ask Jeff a question. Jeff, who are you pulling for? You're off the show.
Oh, I'm off. Yeah. So
who do you hope? Jeff doesn't know who won.
I have no clue who won. No, I have no clue who won.
They're smart, man. They need to know information. Jeff doesn't know.
So it's hard knowing these people, but gut is I'm team ENT. I mean, I'm Ethan and Tyree, the smoke jumpers. I can say that now that I'm gone, but I'm team Ethan and Tyree.
Has anything changed since you watched the show? Did you learn anything from watching? Like, how much did you learn watching it?
Yeah, so I learned so much, because all of their experiences I didn't experience, Mm-hmm. So I have learned a lot. But I even on the show, I hate to admit this, but even on the show, I was rooting for Ethan and Tyree, because those are just good dudes. So even as a contestant, I'm like, man, if something happens and I can't win, I want them to be the winners. So, but yeah, I'm definitely team ENT all the way. So
it's got to be interesting to watch yourself watch you do something on TV and it's being narrated.
Yeah.
Like a guy is narrating your life.
Yeah. It is different to watch yourself.
There's a fun moment in the most recent episode where you're taking an alternate path.
Right. An alternate path.
And one of the other contestants compliments you on your navigation skills.
Yes.
He's like, Jeff has been on point with all of his navigating.
Yep.
I'm like, that's pretty cool. These guys and then the narrators and me like, Jeff's taking him the wrong way.
And it wasn't wrong. It just wasn't 100% right. Alternate path.
Jeff doesn't mind a client. Doesn't mind a challenge.
Yes, I like a good
I thought
challenge.
That was pretty funny. I was like, Jeff gets complimented, and then you get narrated back into just being humble.
Yes.
So I thought that was fun. So yeah, if people have it, like, check it out. It's fun to watch. They're like hour and 15-minute episodes. Some episodes.
USA Network, Peacock.
USA Network, Peacock. Like I said, I know on YouTube TV, if you add it, then it's video on demand. You can binge your way back into catching up. And nothing else, watch it for the scenery. Because if you're like me and you're from Indiana, there's nothing there that looks remotely like anything you've ever seen in Indiana. And then, like I said, thankfully we don't have eels and creeks here. But yeah, check it out.
All right, Jeff. Anything else we need to plug?
No. Basically just like you said, USA, Peacock, watch it. And like he said, watch it for the scenery, watch it for the hometown boy, whatever. Watch it because a guy that's on there, and tag me and say, hey, then I'm more than happy to answer what questions I can answer to anybody. I'm I'm limited on what I can say, but I'm more than happy to talk about it. It was a fun experience for me, and I want people to I want it to be a positive experience for everybody. So I do definitely want to shout out the cross country team for showing up every Monday at 11 p.m. to watch this show with me. It's been fun to have a group of high school runners narrating the show as the show's being narrated. So it's been fun. I took a bit of their season as their coach leaving, so I've invited them out every Monday at 11 p.m. to watch it, and we've had a good group. Cool. I think up to 13, and then like the lowest count was like 6 or 7. So it's been nice to have them narrate the show as it's going. So
that's awesome. All right, for me, final thoughts. I just want to say appreciate you coming on. This was a really fun episode. This is really good. Jeremiah had some car issues today. That's why he couldn't be here. It was he had an emergency and got stranded a ways away. So he wasn't just this wasn't just a secret cabal of 3 runners trying to talk about a race. But appreciate you coming on, Jeff. Hope everybody has a good rest of the week, has a great day, and we will see you next time.